expand or reduce your inventory, depending on what your goals are that evening. If you're not enticed to come just for the possibility of buying new stuff, there will be pizza, and there will also be observing if the weather holds out like last year. So that's always one of the more fun meetings of the year, in my opinion. A couple weeks ago, somebody posted in the forum about Greaser Field. Just want to give some updates about the use of it. On the Club I.O. page, we currently have an updated permit in there, as well as some instructions for notification of officials it's being used. So if any of our members plan on going to Greaser Field in order to do some observing, there are 3 things that you're required to do. Number 1, you must have a printed copy of the permit with you while at the field. Number 2, you need to notify ODNR with the phone number on there. And number 3, you also need to notify the local wildlife officer. That's a couple phone calls. One thing that we are willing to do here is Jeffrey Babcock, who lives not too far away from Greaser Field, has said that if you're planning on using it, reach out to him directly. He can handle those notifications, but also importantly is that ODNR requires that we keep track of the usage of Greaser Field. So if you're planning on using the field and you don't want to reach out to a whole bunch of folks at the state, reach out to Jeff Babcock. He can make the phone calls on your behalf, and then he can keep a record for us on how the field is being used so that we're abiding by the terms and conditions of our permit.
But they still need a printed copy of the permit.
You will still need to have a printed copy of the permit on you, yes. Otherwise, the conversations get awkward and you just don't get to that point. It's real easy to print out the page, or I don't know if even having it saved as a PDF on your phone might work, but just print it off and then everything's easy. 2 other announcements. We have a couple of local big astronomy events coming up around the corner. The Cincinnati Astronomy Society is going to be hosting AstroCon this year. That is going to take place on August 12th through August 15th. I believe part of that includes a tour of their new observatory facility. So if you're interested in that, I don't have a whole lot of information on it, but you can pretty easily find information on Google right now, and I am sure that is going to be a spectacular event that way. A little closer to home, Richland Astronomy Society is going to be hosting the Hidden Hollows Star Party on September 10th through the 13th, Friday through Sunday. And that's also a pretty good event where you can learn about astronomy and do observing. Like how that works. All right, so with that being said, I'm now going to turn it over for our typical partner reports. So, Don, what have we got going on here at Perkins?
Yes. Hi, I'm Don Stevens, director here at the observatory, your host. We conduct regular Friday night programs. Those this time of year starting at 9 p.m. And we are continuing those until mid-June. Actually, the Friday before the CS swap meet is the last program for the summer. We take a brief summer hiatus, trying to get some of the projects done around here. And then we will resume end of July with Celebration of the Sun, which is usually the last 2 Saturdays in July. They start at 2 p.m. or 4 p.m. and they are all about the sun, as the title says. And we do some solar observing. So if you got a solar telescope and you want to come and set it up for the public, that's always appreciated. And help out with that. And also the Friday night programs, we always like volunteers to come out and help with those, set up the telescope. And we don't expect you to be experts or anything like that. And if you don't have a telescope, we got a couple telescopes that you can use, and borrow and take out there. And then, of course, will always be someone out there, at least usually knows pretty much what they're doing and can help you out and learn how to find some things, stuff like that. So, and it's usually a good night for folks. We do those even, like JGAP, we do those even on cloudy nights. Of course, we're not doing telescopes, but I do a tour of the observatory and we'll talk, but it's always nice to have, especially if we have a bigger crowd, help with the parking, things of that nature, and just be around and answer folks' questions, share your love of the hobby with the public, things like that as well. It's a good night to do that. So that's basically pretty much everything program-wise as far as what we have going on. Getting some of the projects done. We're starting to patch a driveway. Part of the driveway is patched. Got some more places we got to do yet. Got the addition of the rail out there. Not quite what I was hoping for. Might get some adjustments on that. We'll see how that goes. And then still no movement forward on the restrooms yet, other than approval to spend the funds. So hopefully, again, over the summer break, we can at least get some movement on that. So for those who don't know, of course, we've got the single occupancy restroom, which is fine for a smaller group, but the groups that get bigger, that gets a bit tedious and inconvenient. So eventually we want to get those restrooms going, and also so we can host some larger events going down the road as well. So with that, thanks for your attention, and okay.
Thank you, as always, Don. Brett Haney, our JGAP director, is not here this evening, so we don't have a report. So we'll go ahead and turn it over to our special interest groups reports. First off, we'll bring up Isaac to talk about CASAS.
Okay. Well, well, good evening, everyone. My name is Isaac Cruz. I'm the head of CASAS, which is the Columbus Astronomical Society Imaging SIG. And I'm really excited. Last month we actually went through our PICS Insight Primer. In other words, how to process images using the program named PICS Insight. We had 10 folks that graduated, quote unquote, from the primer. We had a lot of fun. It was very intense because it's basically 4 days of instruction, just all condensed into 2 days. But everybody enjoyed it, and I'm sure that all the feedback that I've been getting is that everybody enjoyed it. So that was I'm really excited about that. Next step will be to actually plan for an advanced version of that. So the next step, and we'll see when we don't have a date for that yet. But I'll try to actually go ahead and do that either the end of this year or early this year. So if you're interested, as it happens, we're going to start our hiatus, the CASAS hiatus as well. And so there will not be a meeting in June, and I think July and August, but will also be off. So the next one will be after the summer, in September. So that's the plan that we have. But if you have any questions, interest on how to do imaging and taking pictures of the beautiful skies, just let me know. We're here to help you out. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Isaac. All right, Joe's not here tonight to discuss outreach events, so I'd like to turn it over. Do we have any guests here tonight?
Oh, yeah.
Hi, you want to introduce yourself today, sir?
Hi, my name is Matthew Tumble. I'm retired and always had an interest in astronomy. I just never done anything about it, so figured I'd check this out.
Well, welcome to our meeting tonight.
Welcome.
Yes. So thanks, Matt. Do we have any other guests? I feel like I recognize pretty much everybody else. Perfect. All right, well, Matt, tonight, if you have any questions about the club or just anything astronomy related, feel free to reach out to any of us or talk to any of us. There's a lot of knowledge in this room. So, all right, with that, we will turn it over to Ben Roten to talk a little bit about Binoviewers this evening. So, Ben, without further ado, the floor is yours.
All right. Hi, my name's Ben. My wife and I trying to focus. It's mostly my wife. So, please give her the credit where it's due. Also, I have almost no experience with public speaking, so please bear with me. Try my best. But I'm here to talk to you about Binoviewers, what I've learned, what they're like, and what the pros and cons are. So, yeah, we'll just jump into it. I guess I would say I've become pretty passionate about using both eyes for astronomy. I think it's pretty cool. There's definitely something special that happens. Okay, this shows the light path of the light that comes in through a Binoviewer. You can see at the bottom it hits what is called a beam splitter, and about 50% of the light passes through, and the other 50% is reflective. This is showing a design for years. Most of them are with prisms. This is all that I can find online, but it's effectively the same thing. And then this gives a greater detailed diagram of the beam splitter, which is just how I was describing it. It just lets half the light pass through and the other half is reflected. Oh, and the light becomes polarized when it interacts with the beam splitter. So this is relevant if you're using specific types of like filters, like a circular polarizer. So I'm gonna start with the cons. There is a 50% loss of brightness per each eye. This is the most common concern that comes up, but as I'll explain later, it might not be particularly like relevant when you use like both eyes. Because the binoculars are so long, it does introduce a lot of light path or just total distance traveled before the image can reach like focus. So this can introduce quite a few problems with actually reaching focus, depending on the type of like telescope that you're using it on. It does require pairs of eyepieces. So, and also all binoculars that are in like production, they're only like 1 1/4 inch. So you have to use the smaller like eyepieces. You can't use like 2-inch eyepieces. You don't really want to use like 2-inch eyepieces, but you do have to buy pairs of everything. So using like filters can be like complicated. I'll go into what I would come up with. I guess the like easiest option is you could just buy 2 of every filter and screw it onto each eyepiece. But I've come up with a better like solution, but it can be a little like tricky to implement. You can't use polarizing filters because the light itself is polarized as it passes through the beam splitter. You really only want to use that on like a full moon or like something like that, so it's not particularly like relevant. And because there is a reduction in brightness, it's not really like a big deal. It does require a lot of additional equipment, potentially a lot of like adapters and weird stuff that you wouldn't like normally buy to make everything work. I have a whole shoebox like full of just like adapters and washers and like all kinds of stuff because you kind of have to configure the setup for each telescope that you have. So it can be a hassle if you're trying to use it with a large group, for example, with outreach, because you will need to adjust them like you would with a pair of binoculars. So if you were trying to do like an outreach event, it would probably not be like worth your while because of all of the adjustments that each person would have to do. So it does add weight to the setup, which may or may not be relevant. And I've never experienced this with anyone that I've ever like shown it to. Apparently, some people can't merge the 2 images into one. So it's an issue with their visual system. I think if you are one of these people, you would know it because you wouldn't be able to use like binoculars. So, but I've only like read about this. Okay, moving on to the pros. I know that we live in very polarized times. I do think that most people would agree that 2 eyes are in fact better than 1. And so with that being said, there is actually something really special that happens in the brain when you use like both eyes versus 2, and both eyes versus 1, and that phenomenon in neuroscience is known as binocular summation. So research into binocular summation shows that it's not a simple 1 + 1 = 2, and it's actually a lot, like more than that. I don't know if you've ever done at the optometrist when they have you do the eye test and you're like reading the board. If you actually like uncover the other eye, you can see usually at least 1 or 2 letters further down than what you can with just 1 eye. So that's a real world example of how this really come into play. But the research shows that there's at least a 12% acuity enhancement. Newer research shows that might be all the way up to 20%. So that's just an overall across the board. You can see there's a potential 20% improvement of just like anything that you're like looking at. When it comes to contrast enhancement, the older research shows there's a minimum of 40 to 60% of improvement in contrast when you use with both eyes versus one. The newer research shows that goes all the way up to like 80% under low contrast like situations. So it's actually the darker that the image is, the better your eyes are at actually improving the like contrast. So if you take the like 50% reduction in light that you get with the like Binoviewers and you add in the 80% like improvement, you're almost back up to 100%. So I don't know if this might just be like a me thing, but I experienced some binocular rivalry issues, like when I looked at, for example, like a full moon with just one eye. Sometimes I actually see like blackness from my other eye that gets like overlaid onto the eye that I'm using, like with the moon. I don't know if this is just like a migraine thing or not, but obviously with Binoviewers you don't have anything like that. You also have a compensation of the blind spot, which if everybody knows, there is a blind spot in the middle of your eye where you can't see, and your brain just like fills in the data, like even though it's not actually receiving any input from that region. When you use both eyes, it's fully compensated for because the eyes are slightly off center relative to the other, so the data is received from the other eye. It's very comfortable in long-term viewing sessions. 2 eyes, so as part of the binocular summation, 2 eyes make a smaller field of view seem wider. So this is actually a pretty big advantage when it comes to the eyepieces because there's not a big benefit to buying the wide field like eyepieces. You can actually go with like a cheaper possible, and it feels like you're using like a wide field like eyepiece. It also tends to elicit audible wows from people that use them. Okay, I'm gonna talk about my own experience. It definitely improves planetary observing wildly. It also improves solar astronomy, probably even like an order of magnitude above planetary. I have a hydrogen optoscope and a white light setup, and the improvement is wild. I think it has to do with how bright the images are. It's just a lot easier to use with 2 eyes, and you're able to see much more, and you're able to make more sense of the image. There's a book written by some solar astronomers that was mostly about how to image the sun. It was also a lot about observing with different types of equipment. I have a picture of it down there. It's actually the best book that you can buy if you're an amateur. You want to dive in like solar astronomy. But in the book, they also said that they think it's just a total necessity to use the Binoviewers with like solar viewing. So. I have also noticed that averted vision from nighttime viewing appears to be improved in some way. I'm not sure why that is. It's probably just the fact that you're using 2 eyes. And for some reason, eye floaters are reduced when you use both eyes, which I think are pretty apparent when you're looking at the moon. So you see a lot of floaters, and for some reason they just magically disappear when you use both eyes. I don't know what's going on there, but so that's actually pretty big, because that's something on the moon that kind of you're like, okay, I really wish this wasn't here. Yeah. So I as you can see, I've gone like all in with the Binoviewers. I started out before I knew about the Binoviewers, and I had acquired quite a few 2-inch like eyepieces. And I bought my first Binaviewer set, and then very quickly sold all of my 2-inch like eyepieces effectively, and just started converting over to Binoviewers. So the main challenge, if you want to implement this, is the light path or back focus or whatever you want to call it. But it's just how much farther the light has to travel in order to reach the focus. Which, depending on the type of telescope, you can run into quite a few problems. I think you really have to. It's better to sort of plan out what you buy before you just jump in and start like buying stuff, because you might end up regretting, like a purchase. And it definitely, makes sense to like read into it. So the one of the workarounds for the light path issue is you can use what is effectively a Barlow. So you could use a Barlow. There is actually a product called a glass path compensator, which I have right here, which is basically just a Barlow. It's made by Botter, and it's designed to actually screw into the diagonal, and it doesn't take up any additional length like a Barlow would. You know how you would have to drop like a Barlow on and then put the thing in the Barlow. So this can be installed into an optical train, and it doesn't add any length at all. I think this is like only the way to go. Because if you buy like a Barlow and try to use that, you're gonna, it'll make the setup huge, and you also have wasted like quite a bit of like space. You also need to use like a system that uses T2 threads. So if you're into imaging, then I think you'll be familiar with these like types of public threads, because I think they're basically the gold standard. But Botter, once again, makes diagonals and Binoviewers that all use T2 threads. So it allows you to eliminate the need for a clamp, like a clamp style where there's actually like a nose piece and there's like a clamp up here. So these, you can actually see the Binoviewer. So the diagonal here threads directly into the tube, and then the Binoviewer at the top connects to the diagonal. So there's no wasted space. It's just the absolute bare minimum. So I think it's pretty important to get like a setup like that. It's also important you avoid a 2-inch diagonal, because all of the Binoviewers in production use like 1 1/4-inch eyepieces. So if you use a 2-inch diagonal, once again, you're wasting space, and that adds a lot of light path and distance. Unfortunately, Botter is the only company that makes diagonals or accessories that can be used with like Binoviewers that use T2 threads. So you kind of have to commit to the Botter setup. They do make, some of the best diagonals in the world. I was actually reading some reviews where they were comparing them to a variety of other high-end diagonals, and I think as far as light scatter goes, which is about as probably the best metric to measure the quality of a diagonal, they're up there. But I have actually all of these glass path correctors. I actually think it's like a compensator, but sometimes it's labeled as like a corrector, so I'm not sure. And then I have several of these like diagrams as well. This is a table from one of the manuals for this, and it shows the length, the actual distance that the light has to travel before it makes it to the eyepiece. And you can see at the top left, this is just the Binoviewer, and then in this left column here, it's all of the distances when you pair the Binoviewer with the diagonal. When you start to install the glass path compensators, it decreases the length significantly, but then also adds magnification, right? So that's the con, which might not be particularly, if you're just going for planetary observing and you reach their focus, then you're all set there. But you can see that there's a pretty substantial difference when you run the most powerful GPC versus when it just like runs through it straight. So it's a lot easier to like implement this with certain types of telescopes. A Schmidt-Cassegrain, for example, is probably the easiest option that you have because they have so much focus travel. I think most of them can travel all the way up to 300 millimeters. And I think as we saw from that table, you really only need 160 or so. So this is usually requires a Barlow or a GPC if you want to use it with a Newtonian or a Dobsonian because they just don't have as much travel with the focuser. Refractors can work quite well, but it's actually easiest to just buy a refractor that has a lot of the focuser travel, which I did with this one. I was actually able to get this one from it was from a European astronomy site before the tariffs had set in and the price was a lot better. But the other option, if you have a refractor laying around, is you can take a more drastic approach and you can actually cut the tube, or you can somehow shorten the tube so that you're able to get all the travel that you need. This becomes very complicated in order to do it right, and it was actually something that I did to a different with a different scope that I have, but it did work out for me. This is just a sidebar of, as I got into this, I found this out about Schmidt-Cassegrain. This is just like an interesting tangent. But this shows the design for a Schmidt-Cassegrain, and the secondary mirror at the front, it does not move, and when you adjust the focus, the knob at the back, it just moves the primary mirror either forward or backwards. If you're trying to achieve a focus, for example with Binoviewers, you have to move the mirror so far forward that after a certain point, it will actually begin to clip the image that is produced off the primary mirror, because it is designed to where the edges of the image that are produced hit the primary. The mirror can actually travel further inward, and the edges of the light cone will be clipped, and that part of the light will actually be lost. This is a diagram here that shows, actually with that telescope, how much of the image is lost, and you can see up to about 150 millimeters of back focus, there is no loss. And then by the time you get down to 300, which is the maximum, you've gone from a 9 1/4 all the way down to like an 8 1/4. So you've lost effectively, you've reduced the size of the telescope from a C 9 1/4 down to like this, down to kind of approximately an 8 inch. This is just a little tangent that I went on, because I don't think a lot of people know about this, and so it really just affects the brightness of the image if you were to, move the mirror out that far. So the other thing, glass path compensators actually have some additional improvements over a standard Barlow, where with really fast refractors, you actually get some chromatic aberrations and some other optical problems that will affect the image. And when you install one of these, it actually corrects for that. And The main issue for that is due to the size of the prisms in the Binoviewers. If you're using really fast optics, it will it can affect the image slightly, but we're like talking about like pretty slight change. One thing that's worth mentioning is that you effectively can't use eyepieces that are 12 millimeters or smaller in terms of their focal length, because minor differences in the collimation between the two prisms in the Binoviewers will make it so that you can't merge the image. So I actually have, I mainly switch between 18 millimeter and 24, and then if I want additional magnification, I install a glass path corrector. So it actually does kind of make it easy because you don't need a lot of pairs of like eyepieces. You probably just need 2 or 3 at most, and then you just have some of the glass path correctors to change your magnification. If you drop the Binoviewers, there's a chance that they can actually lose collimation. If you look online, you'll see that people pay a lot of money actually and send them back to the factory to recollimate. I dropped these multiple times, and it's actually really easy to just take them apart, and the prisms inside are just held in by set screws, and you can actually just aim them at an object that's right in front of you, and just like loosen the prisms and adjust them, and then you just put the cover back on. But I see it looks like online the companies will usually charge $200 or $300 to do that service. So if you lose a collimation, it's definitely worth it taking it apart and trying to correct it yourself.
And what's the primary cost of the splitter?
What's that?
What's the cost of the Binoviewer relative to this service? How much does a Binoviewer cost?
Oh, so I actually got this pair of Binoviewers for, I think I got these used for $150. I think branded at $250. They sell, theirs are more expensive. I think they sell ones for like $500. But yeah, so I mean, the cost for that like service is just slightly less than just purchasing a brand new pair. Yeah. I think I already talked about the first point, but the other thing that is pretty cool about this is, as eyepiece design has improved, everyone has tended to move towards the wide field like eyepieces, which are like more expensive, and I tend to be a better experience. But with Binoviewers, because of how a tight field of view seems to be very wide, when you use with both eyes, there's not much of an advantage of actually trying to use a wide field eyepiece. So this gives you a good reason to buy old school eyepieces like orthoscopics or high-end apostles, which are kind of at the point where they're actually being discontinued, like people have to stop buying them. But it turns out that the optics on those old school eyepieces are actually really good. They actually tend to be even better than the modern wide field ones in terms of contrast and clarity. And this actually gives you a good reason to buy those like old school eyepieces. And you're getting a slightly better experience than what you would with the modern ones. And that's particularly relevant with planetary viewing, where you want the absolute best contrast. So this is a diagram between a fossil on the left and a modern wide field. This is actually a Nagler from Teleview. You can see the number of lenses here versus here. As a general rule of thumb, this isn't always true, but it's just a general rule of thumb. the more surfaces that the light passes through, the more it can affect the contrast and like so on and so forth. So fossils actually have really great like contrast, and they basically only have 2 surfaces versus here there's quite a bit more. So as far as filters go, this was kind of complicated, and I wanted to use like filters, but I didn't want to have like a bunch of pairs of like filters and have to like deal with like screwing them on. So the best option I could come up with is this is a T2 threaded filter drawer for it's for imaging, but I can just screw it onto the diagonal here and screw the Binoviewers onto this, and then it allows you to just remove the filter and then slide it in and tighten it. This is actually quite cool to use because it allows you to slide the filter in and out while you're still looking through the telescope. So it actually is kind of the best way to use like filters in my opinion, because you can clearly see what the filter is actually like filtering. And it makes it like really like easy to spot stuff. So this is actually like a pretty cool setup, and I would almost encourage this on just a regular, like a 2-inch like setup with like one eyepiece. I forgot to. I was gonna bring some of the like, spacers that I have, and I just realized that I forgot to bring those. But yeah, we'll just skip that. So there are some additional pieces of equipment that you can buy that do make your life easier. There's a company called Dankmeyer. It's actually just like a one-man show that you can just call the office and just talk to the owner. But so he makes a device called Power Switch, which is what I have attached to the bottom of this, and basically it contains 2 Barlows, and then in the middle it's just totally blank. So it allows you, if you just slide this, you've actually placed the Barlow right in the middle. And so it allows you to switch between 3 different levels of like magnification without having to like remove anything. And all you have to do is just change the focus on the telescope. So this is like pretty convenient. He actually sells it as part of this really large setup, but I was able to just like, give him a call, and I bought this like, separately. There are Binoviewers that exist that are called linear Binoviewers that somehow don't pick up any additional light path. I've never used them. I've heard that they're not as good, but this is actually a diagram of how they work. It seems very convoluted, but somehow instead of actually splitting the light, it creates like an image where the one eye on the left, I think it's actually this shows, the one eye on the left receives half of the image, and the eye on the right receives the other half, and then the brain like merges it into one. Apparently, from what I've read, these are not as good, but I guess they do work. It's like kind of weird. So I've never used them. I think it's just worth, it's like worth like mentioning. This is like an alternative if you really don't want to experience like 50% loss of light. I've seen this on like Cloud Nexus is the thing that people do. I think this is pretty wild, but I've heard that it's like a cool experience. And this is a version that I installed for a Dobsonian, which is pretty wild. If you actually stand like in front of that. So people go like pretty far with this. The one thing that I did mention is, so this works really well with planetary and lunar and solar, and it's really easy to get those like setups working, because the amount of magnification, it doesn't matter if it's a very like wide field view, you know, because you're gonna be like zoomed in like anyways. So, and that's definitely where these like shine. I have gone to great lengths to get these like setups like working where I don't have to use any additional magnification, so it allows me to do, you know, like deep space like observing, like looking at star clusters and whatnot. And that's definitely a whole other, you know, you have to be like pretty like committed in order to get that to work, because most telescopes can't, they can't achieve the focus that you need. So, yeah, I know I've heard a few of the people in the club talk about how they have the Binoviewers laying around, but they don't use them, and I'm hoping that, you know, I can encourage more people to use them, because I think they are pretty cool. But I think that's all I've got, so if anyone has any questions.
Mine, she's decent.
I think yeah, I mean, it was a lot. It was a lot. I slowly like, purchased it. I think she actually bought me my first telescope, I think going on 3 years ago now, and I've already like, sold it, and I'm just, you know, I've also bought a lot, actually almost all of this equipment used on cloudy nights. And you can say, I mean, if you spend some time on their classifieds, you can save a lot. It's actually pretty surprising. I think this telescope I bought used on it for like half price, and it had a couple scratches on it, but like everything was fine. So, and both of these like Binoviewers, I got on there as well for a significant like, discount. If you want to get into like Binoviewing, this is actually Celestron brand, but there's a couple other brands that actually they sell this exact same thing, but it just has, you know, like a different brand. I think like it's like a Western or I think you actually
One of your cloud things.
Yeah.
A fairly inexpensive one that I have.
It's the exact same kind as this. These are, I think brand new, they're like $200, something like that. And I bought them on cloudy nights for even less than that. So if you're gonna do planetary or lunar, I actually think these are great. I mean, these are actually, like image quality, like through these is like pretty close to these plotters. It's pretty like, surprising. The disadvantage is these don't give you the full image. So if you're trying to do wide field, you know, deep space like observing without any like, magnification, it'll actually cut off some of the light cone. But if you're using it for planetary or lunar, it doesn't matter. And so I would actually encourage if you wanted to, you know, dip your toes into it, buy a pair of these. And then it was originally designed for it has like a nose piece, you know, that would like drop in and you use a clamp. You can just buy an adapter online and switches it to like G2 threads. So yeah, but once again, it might not even matter because if you're using like a Barlow, you know, it will save you so much like distance that you can probably just achieve the focus right away. So, yeah.
I think mine came with the eyepieces too. So I have 2 matched eyepieces as well. So I don't have the fancy Binoviewers, but it is really nice for the moon or Mars. Makes it really.
Yeah, a couple things. One, I use them and enjoy them, but like some eyepieces, even the simpler ones, your eye position is real critical. You'll be one like if you're just a little off, you're not getting the whole image. And you've got 2 of them, then you got to do that with 2. So that's one aspect. And I was wondering just how is the interocular? Is it just push or is there's a screw adjustment or how hard is that to get your interocular?
So I can show you. It's just like a pair of
So you're
binoculars.
just pushing like binoculars.
Yeah, it's just like binoculars. It's really easy.
Yeah.
These can spin around like a little bit. So yeah, it's pretty easy.
But yeah, as far as I know, different eyepieces are different, so.
For sure.
Sensitive, like you gotta be right there.
Yeah. So I've actually bought a lot of different eyepieces and then like sold them on like cloudy nights, and I found eyepieces that were very comfortable and that, you know, weren't as like sensitive. For some reason, the couple different pairs of Teleview eyepieces that I bought, I actually think that the like, image was like, really good, but it was really, they were very expensive where your eye had to be perfectly centered. And I was kind of not impressed. I was like, man, you know, for like how much like these are, I would have expected, you know, they would be like a little more comfortable to use, but yeah.
Then, could you please show the previous slide of this? Next one, go to the,
Oh,
that one.
yes, yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, so these are, this is called Binoscope, and it's effectively just, you know, two refractors where there's a special mount, and there are actually companies that make these where, you know, they'll sell you the full kit, or they'll just make like it's these tube mounts where you put the two like, refractors in it, and then, you know, so like that way they're like, linked. And then the problem becomes how to get, you know, what you do with the like, diagonal so that you can get the two eyepieces there. There's a Japanese company that makes, and I'm sure that all of this is just unbelievably expensive, but there's a Japanese company that makes diagonals that look like this. Like this is like one of them where, you know, they like, pivot and they're a lot longer, and it allows you to get the like, eyepieces like right in there. And so then if you do this and you're not using the Binoviewers, then there's no like 50% loss of light. So I guess it's, you know, that's like the advantage. And I might have like, said this earlier, but like if you use like a Binoviewer, it doesn't even register that there is any like loss of light. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that you're using like 2 eyes and all, you know, all of that I've talked about. It's not apparent at all that the image is, you know, is like anything dimmer. Although it's supposed to be, it's just not obvious. But obviously the people that like own these, you know, say that the experience is like pretty awesome. But I think you'd have to spend quite a bit of money to get, you know, like a setup like that. So yeah.
Does that scope actually have 2 different diagonals? Or is
Yeah,
it-
so
Yeah,
each
two
refractor.
And does each separate side have like 2 different diagonals effectively? It's going around, it's splitting the corner twice.
Yeah, I think if you look at the diagrams of these, there's like multiple like prisms in there.
Yeah.
And like you can actually, I think they rotate at the joint here and here, you know, so you can like make it like work. But and I think with this you could also run like 2-inch like eyepieces as well. So and then this is the exact same thing, but you know, where someone
Those are actually 6 inches long, they're portable.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. So. Are there any questions?
Okay. So, I guess, any other questions about any other subject before we, wrap it up?
Is it clear outside?
I haven't looked, it was, I mean, there were a few clouds, but. Yeah. And also, mention again, next month is a swap meet, so if you're looking for anything or you're looking to sell something that's been laying around your house, telescope wise, this is a perfect opportunity. Expect to pay cash.
It's 6, right?
Yeah, it's
I
gonna
can see
start
that
about 6 o'clock.
There's some clouds, but it's not actually dark yet, so it may be okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so, okay.
If anyone's like interested, I can like set that up outside and you can all take a look. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So do you have laptops over
What's that?
I mean, I need to look at how the start copies.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
25,
You good.
yeah, some,